How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to a brand new news roundup video. So, first of all, somehow I made it to 2025 without ever getting COVID, but now I've got it, and it kind of feels like, I feel like Superman in that scene with Metamorpho where he held the kryptonite right up to his face. I know for some people it does nothing to them at all, but man, I've had like the proper fever, like body aches, like couldn't get comfortable at night whatsoever. So I do apologize. I know you understand. If there hasn't been as many post-Superman release videos as some of you had expected, that's why it took a little while for my spoiler review and breakdown to get out there. Check that out if you haven't done so already. But that's where I've been. But now, finally, we can talk about quite a bit of DC news, because there's been quite a bit of juicy stuff that we absolutely have to cover, and I need to know your thoughts on in the comments below. And speaking of your thoughts, guys, in addition to my spoiler-free review, my spoiler breakdown, I also want to do another video diving into everything, anything you guys want to pick my brain about when it comes to Superman, what that movie now means for the larger DCU, any theories, any idea, anything you want to pick my brain about in a discussion series video, leave those comments down in this comment section or on my community tab, because I'm planning a whole deep dive video going into stuff just like that. But without further ado, let's get into this video, and I guess we need to start off with a little bit of commentary on the Superman box office. Superman has actually done very well domestically. I mean, here we have a bunch of different reports, one being Deadline. Global for Superman is 220 million, which is about 20 million higher than where we spotted it. But as for international, that's where I think things have been letting it down just a little bit, you could say. Now, Variety say here, and this is as of the 13th, so I do want to stress that some of these numbers are a little bit outdated, but turnout was slightly softer than expected at the international box office, with 95 million from 78 markets, bringing its global tally to 220 million. Box office watchers say they aren't surprised that Superman started stronger in the US compared to overseas, because the character, whose motto is truth, justice, and the American way, is the quintessential star-spangled hero. This is an outstanding domestic opening. If there's any softness here, it's overseas, says David A. Gross, who runs the franchise movie consulting firm. Superman has always been identified as an American character, and in some parts of the world, America is currently not enjoying its greatest popularity. So now we're at the point in where people are readjusting their overall box office projections for Superman, because we all heard the crazy numbers initially being like a domestic opening of 190 million. I mean, I've said this whole time, I don't know about that. I've always lowballed it here on the channel, and those of you who have been watching me will know this, in where I've been saying if it gets the 120 million range or so, that would be great. And as for my overall box office projection, I've always lowballed it at around 680 million plus. Like, that would be a win. I've always said the biggest W of all would be if it could get to a similar range in where the Batman landed in the overall box office run at around $770-ish million. So even though Superman has done very well domestically and genuinely, like as of right now, the Monday made 13 million, and now as for Tuesday, there's an update from the global box office page on Twitter saying that Superman late night showings did even better than we expected, 16 million plus, and certainly the biggest Tuesday of the year, and that's a weekday. But obviously this begs the question of, okay, but how well will Superman do? Like, how well does it kind of need to do? Because of course you have those saying, well, if it doesn't make 800 or 980 million, then it's a complete colossal failure, and that is absolutely not true. But those who are hearing that reportedly Warner Brothers is saying that if it makes 500 million, they'll be kind of happy with that. I can understand why people are like, but really? Like 500 million, you'd be happy with that? Would it have even broken even with 500 mil? So how could you really be happy with that? That can't be right. Well, this is where things get a bit more complicated, because I think there's a win on a few fronts here with Superman. And I have always said this here, and I don't want it to sound like cope, but I've always said Warner Brothers ideally will always, there's no way behind the scenes that they haven't had talks in the office in saying that Superman probably, even let's just say this movie is received well, critically and audience-wise, and let's just say it deserves a box office that is better than what it may end up getting, there's no way we should expect it to get a crazy box office, given that we need to restore goodwill to the audience for the DC brand. So if we can do that, then that is a win. And then hopefully with further installments into the DCU and DC movies, they might turn up more and more because that goodwill and a good foundation would have begun, right? And I think that is absolutely what has been established, because I don't think, again, anyone can dispute at this point, you know, this movie is not only critically acclaimed for the most part, but also audience-wise. Now, I'm not ignoring the mixed reviews, the negative reviews, or the negative audience reviews, but it is a fact that, you know, again, I know some people don't like Rotten Tomatoes, but this score now has had a lot of time to balance out, and it's still at 93% with the audience, and still sitting quite, you know, happily in the 80s, 83% as of when making this video critically, with 385 critic reviews. But does that mean it solved all of the box office concerns? And, you know, they still need to make a little bit of money, don't they? Absolutely. So, with that being said, with the way things are going, and it seems that the word of mouth is getting around because we're having decent, like more than decent weekday returns here, the box office looks like it still will definitely surpass what Warner Brothers said at the 500 million mark. But will it get to the places where people were climbing to the point of like 700, 800 million plus? I really don't think so. I mean, at this point, people are setting up reasonable predictions of, okay, it looks like it could land at around 550 to 600 million plus. Now, in my ballpark, I'm still going to maintain my original box office prediction, lowball prediction at the time of, like, hey, if it could get to like 680 million to 700, that would be great. But gone are the days of international box offices really securing a movie's overall box office like slam dunk. And, you know, that's not really a massive surprise anymore, because I think post-COVID, you know, movies internationally haven't been as bolstered by international markets as much as they used to be pre-COVID. There are other factors coming into this, long story long here, just with regards to, okay, so this movie, it still needs to do kind of well. So let's just say it does make over 600 million on the bright side of things. There are other things to take into account. Now, one of them, which was a little bit confusing here, was Variety detailing a little bit of a different figure about the marketing budget for Superman. So they say Warner Brothers and DC Studios have a lot at stake. And not just because Superman cost a hefty $225 million to produce and roughly 100 million to promote. That 100 million is definitely different from the crazy figures we heard before of like, what, wasn't it like $200+ million people were thinking when it came to Superman's marketing budget? But now Variety, a major trade, is coming out and saying, oh, you know, it might just be 100 mil. So there, technically, what we would have is 225 plus 100 mil, so $325 million for budget and marketing. Now, obviously, as many of you should know, it's not as simple as Superman earning $325 million in the box office and then, oh, look, it's broke even. When this movie is being sold at theaters and cinemas all around the world, Warner Brothers, the studio, does not keep 100% of those ticket sales. Usually it is around half or so. Now, this number is disputed between different cinema chains and whatnot. They sometimes negotiate on the cut to the studio. But the point is, if they make $325 million in the global box office, technically, yes, that is $325 million that they've earned, but not $325 million they get to keep every last penny of. Because again, you know, there's the different fees that they have to deal with. So usually they have to, you know, earn a lot more than $325 million in the global box office run to actually get that $325 million that they spent on the movie through budget and marketing back, which is why you hear numbers like, oh, well, Superman needs to earn over $500+ million to break even to make sense. But you may be like, okay, well, this is maybe a bit concerning, is it not? Because if Warner Brothers are saying that they're okay with 500 million-ish, the box office looks like it's going to kind of struggle to get past 600 million. Are they really going to, get much out of this? Well, this is where we look at the worth of what Superman has achieved for Warner Brothers, plus another factor that not too many people consider when it comes to this, and that is if Superman ends up making, let's say, $550 million to $650 million, don't forget that it's also got merchandising, which actually rakes in quite a bit of cash and actually offsets quite a bit of costs from things like the $100 million marketing. So, Warner Brothers should still be able to make profit off of the DCU Superman movie, even if it didn't reach the heights of an $800 million global box office run. All too often do I see people not even remotely take into account merchandising. And again, I can't state enough how important that will be with getting quite a bit of cash for WB when it comes to Superman, with crypto and Superman-related toys being very popular amongst kids. And then bringing it all back around to kind of what I was saying at the beginning here, what was also important, I think, most of all, for the DCU. And again, this isn't cope. This is just something they had to nail above anything else. Arguably, dare I say it, almost arguably above box office, and that is the movie doing well with audiences and critics. And if they at least achieved that, and they didn't make as much profit on this movie as they wanted to, that is still a win. Because if this movie, if we just bring up Rotten Tomatoes again, look at this, and now imagine if this movie had a similar kind of domestic opening and international opening, but then you saw the critic rating was at 56% or 53 or 49%, and the audience one was 43%. And then that meant that the word of mouth wasn't good, and the second weekend drop was just tragically bad. Do you see what I mean? This could have gone a very, very different way. So this is the way you need to tap into this, in the thinking of DC Studios, James Gunn, especially David Zaslav and Warner Brothers Discovery overall. They're looking at this in terms of nobody's fooling themselves with how, yeah, sure, this movie isn't really going to make 800 million or something crazy like $1 billion. Nobody's kidding themselves there. However, they're still very happy that they have launched a new flagship with the DCU that has reached critical and audience acclaim. It's still doing very well in the domestic box office. Sure, it's lagging behind in the international box office like Superman has always done. But after everything we've just gone over, regardless with how the momentum's going and the word of mouth is going, all while they haven't scooped all of the chips that they would have wanted to off of the casino table, so to speak, into their pot that they were hoping to fill up, they've still got all the people in the casino gathered around their table to be checking out hey, what are you up to over there? And that is great. But that's where we're at. Ultimately, we're going to have to wait and see how this does. We really are. But so far, domestically, so good. Would have been great if international picked up even more, but I don't know about that. Another thing that I will say that sucks about this, with how I think Superman, as much as I would like it to get to my $680 million prediction, before you know it, Fantastic Four's going to be here, and all the attention's going to be on that. So Superman only really kind of had a weekend, its own weekend, to do its own thing before yeet, it's out there again, with the attention being on something else. And you have audience members, sure, there will still be people going to see it, but do you see what I mean? The kind of lens has been put on a whole different thing. Either way, I've been rambling about this one enough. I will keep you guys posted with how this does, obviously, throughout the weeks to come. So up next is a very exciting thing that James Gunn teased, which is something we've all been floating around with our discussions here before, but hearing James Gunn talk about it again, and also kind of lock us in even more into a guessing game of, okay, but who and who was he on about here? So an interview with Screen Rant, they say, and with Crypto too, I thought he was going to be this cute little messy sidekick, but he's very integral to the story and also seems to be the connective tissue. Do you have a larger plan for Crypto? It's almost like when I think of Guardians and how it ended up being Rocket's story. James Gunn then says, yeah, I don't think it's Crypto's story. I think I do know whose story it is. And it probably isn't anyone would ever expect. And then Screen Rant say, is it someone we've seen? Gunn says, yeah. Screen Rant then say, okay, so you have a through line, and are you building towards a big event? Gunn then says, yeah, and it's not what anyone thinks. It's not what anyone would guess. But I think that if people watch the next season of Peacemaker, they'll see where a lot of these things are going and have a little bit more of a sense of maybe what can happen. So who is this? Who would Gunn say that it would be when we get through enough projects and we kind of look back in retrospect to see what this story, or kind of who's been the heartbeat of this story throughout? I've seen some people say someone like Lex Luthor, which would be pretty nuts. I mean, we have had Peter Safran say that, despite Superman, it's not just Superman that he's going to appear in, because he's going to be a major player in the DCU. So Nicholas Hoult is going to be back despite, the ending of the movie. I don't know about that one, though. I mean, I guess I can see what people are saying. Like, some people are theorizing, could he... Again, I have to speak lightly here just in case people haven't seen the movie, but he could be helpful in ways of setting up, teams out there. Like, there was this Planet Watch thing, but what if he could, establish the Authority or something like that through working with the government or something, and this could lead to some interesting connective tissue throughout the DCU that could still, I don't know about this redemptive Lex Luthor arc, though. Like, a character to me that, when Gunn says I don't think it's anyone would ever expect, sure, Luthor would apply there. But I've seen suggestions, and this came to my mind as well, even though I didn't feel convicted in my thoughts about it at all. But Rick Flag Sr. Rick Flag Sr.'s had a pretty, and I think he will have quite a solid through line in the DCU. We first saw him in the first DCU thing, Creature Commandos. We've now seen him in Superman, albeit very briefly. He still had small but important scenes there, and popped up right again towards the end of the movie. Do you remember that one line? Again, I don't want to give it away, but then it kind of cuts to Rick Flag Sr.'s face, and he's kind of like, right, like looking to the future about that line. And now we know he's going to be in Peacemaker Season 2, and we've literally got Gunn here saying that with regards to building towards a big event, it's not what anyone would guess. But I think if people watch the next season of Peacemaker, they'll see where a lot of these things are going and have a little bit more of a sense of maybe what can happen. We know Rick Flag's going to be quite a big part of Season 2 of Peacemaker, and I think he will just continue from there on out. So I don't think, by the way, whoever this is about is going to be poised up to be like the main character of the DCU, because I think people out there would arguably say that Batman and Superman are bigger characters than Rick Flag Sr. But I don't think that's what he's getting at. I think if there's a lens to look at this at with this question being asked, in that one day, several years from now, we could kind of look back and see how there is maybe this character at the heart of it, who, if we look at the journey they've gone throughout the projects, we can kind of see how their story has evolved in such a way where, sure, we're going to see throughout the DCU various Superman appearances, and we could see how his story has evolved. But I think, for example, with someone like Rick Flag Sr., you really just do see from square one right up until, I don't know, DCU year 4 or 5 or 6, where there's been quite a consistent through line with how he's overlapped through all of these different projects. Let me know if you think I'm wrong there. Again, I'm not saying Rick Flag Sr. is my final pick at all, but I feel like it would be someone like him more so than Lex Luthor. But then again, as Gunn said himself, that it's not anyone would ever expect. And also, yeah, looking forward to Peacemaker Season 2 in of itself, but knowing how much, I think the connective tissue to larger things in the DCU is going to be way, 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 way bigger than anyone was expecting. Now, up next, as I was recording this video, James Gunn just posted to his social media, "Look out, 2026." And I actually love this. We got obviously a new kind of promo of Supergirl for Supergirl in 2026. And I love it because, for Superman, look up. for Supergirl, look out. Now, I know this sounds quite entitled of me to say, but I love that kind of look of Supergirl to the point of where I'm like, come on, I would have loved to have seen her face, like her full face in it as well. But, you know, I'll take what I can get here. Now, spoilers for those of you who haven't seen Superman because of what I'm about to say about the Supergirl costume we see in this picture here. So 3, 2, 1, get to the next timestamp if you don't want to know, but I trust a lot of you have seen it by now. But this suit is slightly different, believe it or not. The Supergirl suit that we see here has a different belt. It's much more golden. There's kind of no red bit going through there on the side. The skirt is a bit different, and you should be able to see that with the photos that I'm showing on screen right now. I think even the little gold trim on the boot there could be an addition. Now, I think the main reason for this is, even though it's largely, roughly the same look to the suit, I think it's just by the time they were shooting the movie, they improved upon the suit even more. So this is like the suit you will see in Supergirl that is coming out next year. But the suit that we saw in Superman, although it is very still like comic book accurate to the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow comic, that was the one they you know, fashioned up for that filming at the time, but since then they've made even more improvements, and I have to say I like these improvements. The gold is way more sleek. Now, as for the skirt, the only thing I'll say is I liked the kind of layered look to the skirt that we had before, and this one just seems more like a fabric. Rather than one that kind of shoots down in different kind of plates. Not like it was plated before, but I trust you get what I'm trying to say. But yeah, little bit of an update there. Love the lookout thing, the kind of attitude that comes with that. It's going to be a fun ride with Supergirl and Ruthie in the movie next year. And again, for those of you who haven't read Woman of Tomorrow, I suggest you do, because like when you do, you will see exactly what they're doing with this casting from Millie Alcock. All right, so up next, guys, your boy Apocalyptic Horseman from Nexus Point News has come out with an exclusive. What we know about DC Studios is Clayface so far. Now, the stuff we learn here is quite intriguing because originally they talk about the history of Clayface here, and after talking about how Mike Flanagan pitched the movie to DC Films and later DC Studios in 2023, they confirmed that Flanagan had begun to develop the film as a part of the Batman epic crime saga, but in December 2024, DC Studios had greenlit Flanagan's script to be a part of the DCU, with Matt Reeves attached to still produce the film along with DC Studios. So that is fascinating to me because I think this still does harken back to the Hollywood Reporter report of old, of how we heard that Matt Reeves was meeting with writers and directors to talk about spin-off things or projects to do with Professor Pig, Clayface, and Scarecrow, among others. And maybe like these were the whispers those trades were picking up on back then. But it got flipped over to the DCU. Now, we don't have a reason as to why that is. It's cool to hear about this. But I think they probably thought, if we're going to do a Clayface movie, or while we see merit of it being in the Matt Reeves Batverse to more of a Golden Age Basil Karlo one potentially, even though it was still Mike Flanagan's Matt Hagen version with Basil Karlo implementations, like inspirations and backstory, would it be better served to bring out a fully fledged blob mud monster in the DCU? How about that? And maybe Matt Reeves, when talking to James Gunn, even though James Gunn would obviously have overall say here, was like, you know what, yeah, maybe it would do more justice to this character if we did this as a DCU story. Because we know that Mike Flanagan was literally inspired by A Feat of Clay. That is literally Matt Hagen's Mud Monster. Even though it was apparently meant to be in the Batman epic crime saga, which I would have loved to have seen, that we all know that would not have been fantastical mud monster mode. So I will say that I think I do largely agree with their decision here. Now, sources tell Nexus Point News that Hagen is a handsome, up-and-coming actor who's attacked and disfigured. Originally from Gotham, he moves to Hollywood to escape his troubled past and begin a career as an actor. With his disfigurement, his career and outlet as an actor is ruined and is eventually transformed into a shape-shifting monster. They then go and say that Hagen's love interest and co-star in the film is scientist Dr. Caitlin Bates, an original character created for the film. Bates is the CEO of a biotech startup seeking to create cutting-edge medicine and medical technology. Bates sees Hagen as a way to grow her company and cure his condition. Throughout the process, she falls in love with him, while her fiancé, John, grows suspicious of their relationship. John is a detective and committed to Caitlin and his job. The antagonist of the film is set to be a crime boss, who, like Caitlin and John, is another original character. At the moment, the film is not set to feature any recognizable DC characters and will primarily consist of original characters in this character-driven horror film. Now, I'm just saying it, like, knowing that Mike Flanagan wrote this as like a horror thriller tragedy Clayface story, I've got a feeling that, you know, up-and-coming actor Matt Hagen, while trying to get cured by Dr. Caitlin Bates and they fall in love kind of thing, I've got a feeling he's gonna, like, inadvertently, maybe accidentally kill her, and that's gonna be a part of just the horror kind of messed upness of this movie. Yeah, I know that's kind of tropey to predict, and it's, yeah, not that hard to predict, and maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like with that, like, journey of, like, maybe how, you know, obviously messed up Matt Hagen's going to be, and he's going to find Caitlin Bates, who really is there to hopefully help him, even though she's got her own interests in, you know, helping expand her company. But clearly they get connected, but she's got her husband. Like, maybe things just go terribly, and then he kind of engulfs her in a big blobby mud monster mode. So just a bit of a Clayface update. I think I'll want to dive into this in maybe another discussion series video, but for now, let me know your thoughts on this rough outline for where things are going to go in the plot of Clayface, or some of the bare bones of what characters we're dealing with, how they're involved, and where things go from there. We've also had James Gunn recently say on DCU Batman and Wonder Woman, it's not going to be until the script is ready. Both scripts are being written now, and if they're good, we'll go into production immediately. So it really depends on how we can get the scripts done, because the one thing I'm just not going to do is go into production without a script I feel is fantastic, especially for those characters who deserve the best. I'd rather wait a year than go too soon. So everyone, like, just know that Gunn will be doing Batman and Wonder Woman in the DCU when they are ready. Now, having said that, Variety put out a new piece today, and in it they talk about how, although Warner Brothers has sequel options on Corran Sweat and Brosnan, a sequel announcement does not appear to be imminent. Instead, sources say that the studio is fast-tracking a Wonder Woman movie, and the studio is thrilled with Matt Reeves' just submitted screenplay draft for the sequel to The Batman. Now, keeping it in line with Wonder Woman here, Gunn did say not long ago that a Wonder Woman movie is being worked on now, and I feel like this is really just regurgitating that. I mean, I'm not saying it's fake news, but when they say fast-tracking, you know, what I do want to caution with reading this is that they still need to write the screenplay. You know, this could still take quite a while to do, so don't expect it to be out the door by, like, February 2026, but, you know, at the same time, like, Wonder Woman is on the way, Batman is on the way, it's just they are going to be ready when they're ready. We also had James Gunn being asked by a fan, when does Superman 2 come out? And Gunn's like, define Superman 2. Now, this has got a lot of people being like, okay, so does James kind of mean, like, okay, the follow-up to Superman isn't going to just be Superman 2 in the straight-up sequel sense, so therefore define Superman 2, because if you define Superman 2 slightly differently, it might mean something else. So maybe the sequel to Superman is what James Gunn is saying here, could be something else. And I know people keep going to World's Finest, but maybe not. We're really just having the same conversation here. I think it is more evidence, if you will, for how whatever will come out with David Corran Sweat next playing his role as Superman won't be a straight up sequel to Superman, as James Gunn has said. Like, it's somewhat of a, it's not really a proper sequel, it's a somewhat sort of sequel, but it's not exactly a sequel. I think this is all a part of that same answer we heard a little while back. So where he's like, define Superman 2, it will have David Corran Sweat in it. So obviously the example of World's Finest here works as an answer for a lot of people, because it kind of matches with what James Gunn has been saying. That would be a somewhat sort of sequel, but I do believe there are other projects out there that you could say, well, define Superman 2. It's kind of not Superman 2, but you could still have it as a somewhat sequel to Superman's events, with Superman still in it and some other characters. So again, I think the theories just really continue from here on out. So from Variety here and DCU Superman News saying, Eddie Gathegi confirms he signed a multi-project deal with DC Studios to play Mr. Terrific. I know that I have a multi-project deal, but the specifics of that are unknown to me. And well, we're hearing from the Wall Street Journal quite a few things, and how James Gunn is reportedly considering a Mr. Terrific spin-off series, similar to Peacemaker, to that of the Suicide Squad. So how, obviously, we saw Peacemaker in the Suicide Squad, then we got his series, now we've seen Superman, we could get a Mr. Terrific series. Now for me, I mean, especially with how much of a big standout he was in Superman, I would absolutely adore this. There is so many things you could do with Mr. Terrific. I would like to think that a lot of people would be down for this as well. I think the only hesitation in some people's minds would be, do we really need to give a spin-off to you, a spin-off to you, a spin-off to you? Because there's also talks about the Wall Street Journal claiming that Gunn is also looking into a Jimmy Olsen spin-off series. I guess there is something they can do there, but that's where I'm a bit more X'd out with where I'm standing, and I'm sure many other people as well, compared to someone like Mr. Terrific. But I would say that if there is any doubt in people's minds, you know, people felt the exact same way about Peacemaker from the Suicide Squad, and then they love Peacemaker. So if people feel even stronger about Eddie Gathegi's Mr. Terrific post-Superman, and are somewhat doubting, like, but, you know, I loved him in Superman, but do we really need a series? I think people will be even more overjoyed when that series eventually comes out, because I think it would be one that's very strong. You could get into the foundations of the Terrifics, like maybe he takes on Metamorpho after the events of Superman. Like there's so much you can do there. It would just be incredible. And Eddie Gathegi could absolutely carry it. Now, last couple of updates here. We also had Gunn say about the Metahuman mural in Superman that one of the characters on the mural resembles a famous actor. Now, Home of DCU here put a picture of Dr. Fate, Pierce Brosnan's Dr. Fate. And I absolutely agree with that, because if you go and look at the image of the mural, you'll see this guy stood there in a suit with kind of like this white hair, and he's holding like this golden thing. So it's literally like Pierce Brosnan as we saw him in Black Adam. Now, knowing Gunn, like, I really hope this is true, because I think we all really love that casting as Dr. Fate. Now, what Gunn would do, kind of like what he's explained before, is maintain some threads of canon from the DCEU, but disregard others. So basically, what could very well end up happening is that Dr. Fate maybe never died in Black Adam and is maintained to still be a thing in the DCU with the same casting. Like, think of it that way. But at the same time, just because, you know, he's on the mural, it doesn't mean that he survived. Like, so maybe he still died in the past. And that's a thread of canon that's maintained. And, you know, he's on the mural in the Hall of Justice because he's a part of the superheroes' metahuman tapestry of the past, so to speak, but he still died. But I don't think anyone would people still really love that? It's like, cool, Gunn, you acknowledged him, you liked Dr. Fate, but why not maintain a thread of canon to the point of where he's alive? I think we would all like that a lot more. So I'm hoping that's the case, and I'm hoping he resembled Pierce Brosnan because he plans to keep Pierce Brosnan on as Dr. Fate in the new DCU in a project or two or more. At some point in time. And then lastly, guys, we've had Lanterns, I think, from the look of things, that they've wrapped, because they had a wrap party. And, well, you know what this means? I'm really hoping that we could get a little tidbit or something soon from Gunn or DC Studios, just kind of being like, hey, we've wrapped filming. I mean, I guess they've already wrapped filming for a few days now, but maybe post another picture, just something, anything. I'm looking for any kind of Lanterns crumb, but we might have to wait until New York Comic Con in October, if we're lucky then as well, because right now at San Diego Comic Con, as we've already discussed, but also recently teased by Gunn, that the cast of Peacemaker and Gunn himself are heading to San Diego Comic Con to talk Peacemaker. So, you know, extra doubt for any Supergirl or Lanterns or anything like that at San Diego Comic Con. Again, maybe New York Comic Con. But let's just have our fingers crossed that we could get some nuggets before then. But I'm going to shut up now. I've been talking for long enough in this video. I need to get to editing it. So let me know your thoughts on everything that we covered here. Don't forget to leave your comments or ideas or theories or just anything you want to pick my freaking brain about when it comes to the DCU, the repercussions for the DCU because of Superman, or anything in Superman for a discussion series video that I'm hoping to put out on Friday. So very, very soon, get your comments in down in that comment section. Leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it. Consider subscribing for more DC videos just like this. But until next time, I'm going to love you and leave you. So thank you for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. I'll see all of you guys in the next video. Goodbye.